Just a couple of blocks from me over here in downtown Los Angeles, Donald Trump's ICE agents keep conducting these raids and stopping random people, and that may violate the Constitution. I'm Shant Karnikian with Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. Say hello, Brian.
Hey, Shant. So this is a great discussion. I mean, we both are coming from different parts of Los Angeles today. I live in the Pasadena area where in the last couple of days, people playing in the park on a weekend had ICE agents come and raid the park, which has now led to the city of Pasadena closing several of its parks where people and their families go to recreate on the weekends and in the evenings.
Yeah, and I think a good starting point about this is to talk about the Fourth Amendment, which I think provides a lot of protections to American citizens. It's one of the most important rights that we have, and it enshrines our freedom from unreasonable search and seizure. So we should talk about that.
Try saying that 3 times, Shant. Look,
right.
One of the things I've seen far right nut jobs out there saying is the Constitution shouldn't apply to people who aren't U.S. citizens. That's absolutely ridiculous. That's not
what the Constitution says, right? That's not what it says.
For 250 years, the Constitution applies to everybody inside the United States. But the real question here is, how far can ICE agents go? Can they sit there and come into a park on a weekend and start asking for people's papers?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a major violation of rights. And if there is reasonable suspicion, you can do that. You can stop people and ask them to identify themselves. But without reasonable suspicion, you can't do that. And I think that's a principle that applies to whether it's foreign nationals, legal residents, U.S. nationals, U.S. born citizens. It applies to anyone that's inside this country. Now,
look,
so the
standard is articulable or reasonable suspicion. It isn't necessarily probable cause, but it means you have to have articulable suspicion. And let me assure you, despite what Donald Trump and Stephen Miller think, being brown or being a person of color is not articulable suspicion. You can't just go up to every person who's Latino in the United States and ask for their papers. It's not just outrageous. It's reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s and 40s.
Yeah, it's just absolutely wild. I mean, how can you take a whole bunch of and where do you draw the line, right? I mean, it's one thing to say this might be a place that is frequented by people that are undocumented or are here illegally, but it's another to just stop random people in parks or in the fashion district just a couple of blocks from me. I just saw a video of it happening live a couple of hours ago, just stopping people and grabbing them and asking for their immigration papers. I mean,
yeah, that's going on right now, even as we're recording this. And here's the reality. Let's face the reality. A huge percentage of the 10 million people in Los Angeles are Latino. A huge percentage of people here specifically look like they are from a Latin American country. So
that's part of why they're doing this targeted effort here, because they see us as a sanctuary city and they see this as a means to score a point, I think, with the base. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right?
Of course
Stephen
it
Miller
is.
It's
war on Los Angeles. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's go through what the actual standard is. It's articulable suspicion. Now, if there's a place where undocumented people gather and they're there, they may have the right to go in and question people. And if somebody runs, there's a lot to unpack here, but if somebody runs, the law has said that if they run that increases the degree of suspicion. They can potentially go after people at that point. But ICE officers are not traffic officers. They can't stop people on the street for a speeding violation, right? They can't go into a general neighborhood. Let's say there's a neighborhood, and there's plenty of them in Southern California. There's plenty of them in lots of cities in the United States where there's a Latino population, and they can't go in there and start knocking on doors and asking for papers, right?
Yeah. So I think that sort of really limits what that reasonable, articulable suspicion can be, right? You can't stop them for traffic violations. You can't stop them for, I don't know, permit violations at a store or something, or other types of violations. So it really limits it. So what is the articulable standard? Like, why hasn't the Trump administration been able to articulate this? That you can't tell by looking at someone that they are here illegally. I mean, that's impossible.
No, and I want to go one step further with this. Is let's assume that they do go up, and we know that they've been doing this to people who are here illegally, whether they're U.S. citizens, whether they have visas or work permits or whatever the case may be, and they start doing this and asking for their papers. I believe we're now going to be looking at 1983, 1984 violations of federal law, which give rise to civil lawsuits. And I'm seeing now civil lawsuits being filed, and they should be filed. There should be class action lawsuits on this. Filed because you are racially profiling people because of the color of their skin and going up to them and asking for their documentation.
An entire population. I mean, you're racially profiling an entire group and a protected class based on the color of their skin. It's the definition of like violating the Equal Protection Clause, isn't it? Just stopping people.
And let's talk. I mean, we haven't even crossed into this because there's so much here we can talk about, and We'll do another video soon on what's happened with the Los Angeles Dodgers and where ICE has been going into parking lots and trying to go into the Dodger premises and what they can and can't do. But let's assume, Shant, that they do go up to somebody and randomly say, let's see your papers. What's that person's rights?
I mean, their rights, especially if they are a U.S. citizen, they have the right to just refuse. They have the right to not talk to that federal officer. They have a right to have a lawyer present. They have a right to ask whether they're being detained. And by the way, to detain them, to arrest them, they need reasonable suspicion, or they need probable cause for that. They need probable cause of the fact that this person has committed a crime.
And I understand. I want to correct one thing you said. You said U.S. citizen. This applies to everybody. They come up to you and say, I want to see your papers. I want to see your documentation. You can refuse. You can refuse.
Yeah, someone residing or present within the United States. Yeah, they have the right to refuse. Right. They're afforded what's called due process.
Right. And due process applies to everyone. Now, the law is that if you are not a U.S. citizen, you do have to carry with you identification to indicate that you're here legally. But that begs the question of whether they even have the legal right to ask you for that. And the simple answer is, in most cases, they do not. They do not have an articulable suspicion. So
unless you are committing some other crime, or they can articulate that they have a suspicion of another crime you're committing. By itself, they don't. And look, one of the ways that they do this, there's very sneaky ways that, and I've read about all of these, is they'll go into an establishment, and we could talk about that too, their rights on private property versus out in the street. But they'll go into an establishment and they'll say, well, who here is legal? Who has legal papers? And they'll ask them to separate into groups. You don't have to do that. You don't have to follow those orders. Come out if you are here illegally, or come out if you're here legally, and they go on and they arrest everybody else inside who's implicitly conceded that they're here illegally. You don't have to cooperate with any of those things.
Right. We know what the Trump administration is doing. They're using intimidation, and they're using the fact that most people didn't go to law school. Most people don't have a working knowledge of the law, and they think that when a law enforcement officer, and I just came through customs at LA International Airport, and you see them in their uniforms with their guns, with their badges, with their vests on. It's very scary and it's intimidating, and they're using intimidation. And this is the whole Trump play card to get people to
theater. I think it's political theater what they're doing here, and they're just doing it to, what does this come down to? I mean, look, on the campaign trail, they had made promises to go after violent illegals. You know, they're rapists and they're drug dealers and they're criminals. That's perfectly fine. I don't think anyone opposes being hard on criminals. Anyone opposes enforcing the law against violent criminals. These aren't violent criminals. These are people that happen to be brown. You know, that's not right to go after them. I mean, that they have committed no crime.
But it's easy.
Another talking.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say another big talking point is they're here illegally. That's a crime in and of itself. I mean, this country was built on the back of immigrants. I mean, the founding fathers were people that came from other places. We support that. That's what's built this country. And that's what runs this city and many of the cities across the world, you know. And I'm the child of immigrants, for example. You know, my parents were given certain opportunities. Why wouldn't we want to foster that? Why are we out here intimidating these people, a big percentage of the population that contributes to our society? And I think it's to score political points with the base. That's all it is. That's all it is.
And so let's just recap, because we're going to do more of these and we're going to talk about some of the other issues. But here, they have to have an articulable suspicion in order to stop you and ask for your identification. People do not have an obligation to simply give them information or speak to them. They have a right to a lawyer. Due process applies to everybody who's in this country, whether you're documented, undocumented, a citizen, a visa holder, a green card holder. You have absolute right to that. And there are absolute limitations here. And ultimately, I predict there are going to be a flurry of civil lawsuits against Trump, against Stephen Miller, against the Trump administration, and against ICE for civil damages, because they're hurting people who have no reason to be targeted other than the color of their skin. So
yeah, right.
Let's stay tuned, and we're going to do more of these on this subject. You get the last word, Shant.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, people have rights if they are improperly or illegally detained. They have serious rights. You know, we wouldn't let private citizens do this to each other. Why should government actors be allowed to do that to people, to hardworking people in our city and across the country? So people have rights if they are improperly detained, and they should pursue them. And this is ultimately going to come back around. And I think it's going to blow up in Trump's face, because it's going to cost taxpayer money. Those lawsuits they're not going to come out of Trump's pocket. That's going to cost taxpayer money. So the base needs to realize
everything they're doing is costing a lot of taxpayer money. So
that's right.
This is Brian. That's Shant, my partner. We're going to do some more of these and dig deeper into these important legal issues, which don't affect Los Angeles. Thank you for watching.
See you in the next one.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.